Welcome. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to cut the foot for your T-bowl project for pottery class. Okay, you should have already watched the other two videos and thrown a few T-bowls and left enough extra clay here at the side to trim the edge and enough clay at the bottom to cut your raised foot. All right, so this being our final demonstration example, we threw a T-bowl and we looked at the cross section and we said this is what it should look like. You should have this extra clay here and this extra clay here, and those are the pieces that we want to cut away. Ideally, you would have the wall of your T-bowl and the base of your T-bowl the same thickness. All right? Then, just to give you the kind of cut version, here's a cut version already. You can see that foot at the base. This one is a little bit thick here and maybe a little thick here, but this is what we're going to demonstrate in the video. Before you get started, you're going to need foot cutting tools. These are the two most common that we have in the class. These are the ones I'll use for the demonstration. You should have a pin tool at your disposal to check center. And here is the T-bowl that I threw in the other demonstration. Notice there's more clay left here at the bottom, and there's clay left here at the bottom. Then, before you get started, you should have a couple 4 chunks of clay. Roll them into a nice shape so that they're even. Then you're going to take, as this is what you're going to attach to the wheel head. Then you're going to take your piece of pottery, your T-bowl, and press it or set it down into the center of the wheel. If you have the concentric circles on the wheel head still, use those to center your pot. If not, do the best to eyeball it. Then use your pin tool to check center. You're going to turn your wheel on just very slowly so the pot doesn't go flying off. Press your pin tool into the edge, like close to the end of the foot, and see how it's off. This side is a little bit thicker on the line, so if I move it, the thick side in ever so slightly, it's going to be a little bit more on center. And then I'm going to check it again, make a new line, and that one's perfect. It's right on. So use your pin tool to check the thickness of that final line, and that will help you get your T-bowl centered. Then take your 2 chunks of clay and press them next to your T-bowl, and then take your thumbs and press down into the wheel head. You want to secure them to the wheel head without damaging the edges of your T-bowl. Now your T-bowl should be dry enough that if you squeeze the rim of it, it doesn't bend back and forth. Okay, like this demonstration, it's fairly stiff, but it's soft enough that if I take my finger and I just, do a little line on it, it will easily mark. Okay, you want that to be, soft enough that it will nicely cut your clay. Take the other 2, put them at 90 degrees to the first 2, and press them into the wheel head so that they secure themselves to the wheel head nicely, but that they don't damage the rim of your pot. Then turn your wheel on slowly and grab your cutting tool. The first step I like to do is let me just get rid of these marks for the sake of the video, is I like to just flatten the bottom of the pottery. So I just take this tool and just kind of gently graze it along the top. Okay. Now, in my mind, I'm seeing where I want my foot to be cut. I'm going to draw it on here just for the sake of the video. So if I just press my tool into the surface here, I can say, well, that's where I want the outside of my foot to be. Maybe they'll do that the inside. And this is and that's where I want the inside of my foot to be. Okay, so it's a pretty small foot. I might change that as I go depending, but in my mind I'm visualizing where I want the inside and the outside to be. Then I'm going to take the tip of this tool and just gently rock it down into the center so that the clay is pulling, and it'll make a little ribbon here. The first thing I do is I define the inside of the foot. Okay, it's easier to do that, and you always want to kind of move in towards the center rather than out. If you come out towards the foot, you're going to ruin or damage that foot piece. Okay, now I'm going to angle this and pull it into the center to remove the center piece of that clay. Now I've got a pretty small foot, so I could use this tool here and use that to cut this foot as well. If I just gently rock it down in, that's a little bit easier just because of the size. Okay, then I'm going to pull this in towards the center and trim that out. Okay, now I want to define the outside edge. So we said my outside edge would be, oh gosh, I don't know, somewhere about right there. Okay, I'm going to take the larger tool and rock it in towards that foot. Meanwhile, I'm going to hold my other hand on the inside here so my T-bowl doesn't jump. First, I'm just going to graze the little finger divots off the outside so that I don't damage my clay. Then these little trimmings that you have, these are harder. You don't want them back in your throwing clay. They should go in your bucket. Okay? Now that I've got those little finger divots off, I'm going to put my wheel back on. And notice that my wheel is going pretty slowly as I do this. If you go too fast, you just can't control it. You want it to go slow. So here it is again. I'm just going to rock this in. And as I slowly rock it in, I'm aiming for the size of the foot that I originally wanted. Now, as you get more skilled at this, obviously you don't have to mark your feet. You can just kind of, go from where you feel it should be. All right, so there I've kind of met where I want the foot to be on size-wise. Now I've got all this leftover kind of junk clay at the edge. Now I'm going to hold and I'm going to use the like wider looped part here and press down and rock it away. Okay, so I'm just going to press down, gently of course, rock it away from the foot down to the edge of the T-bowl and trim that junk off. Now normally I wouldn't be stopping my wheel all the time like that to get those little chunks off, but for the demonstration I'm doing that just so it doesn't look too dirty. Okay, again taking this and rocking it down like that to give a nice edge to it. Okay, now I'm going to use this other little one here. I like to have a little curved piece on my feet, so I'm just going to use this one to edge this foot so it's nice and straight. And I'm going to use the curved piece to just trim a little bit out of the center. And of course you'll develop your own style as you trim a couple feet, and you'll say, well, I really like the feet to look like this, or I like the feet to look like that, and you can kind of adjust them to be how you want. All right, whenever I go to art fairs or pottery shows, I'm constantly checking the feet and how I like the feet or not like the feet of a piece of pottery. It's very essential. Now, one thing that you can do to check the thickness is if you tap, you'll hear a hollow sound, and the more hollow it is, obviously, the thinner the clays become. So my foot up here is pretty much right. This part could be trimmed down. Now I've got a little chunk of something in my clay there. I just had like a little piece of sponge or something, so it came out as I was cutting the foot, and I can patch that back up later. Okay, now I've got that finished. I'm going to just hold the tool at the top to flatten the edge. I'm going to curve the inside. And I'm going to put a little undercut angle on the outside part of the foot. Like that. Okay, now I would call that a finished foot. The last thing I want to do is before you take it off the wheel head, I like to get just my one finger wet, and I like to smooth the wheel, or not the wheel, sorry, the foot. I like to smooth it just with my finger on the inside and on the outside so that the final bit of it is nice and smooth, because these are meant to be sitting on a table, on a coffee table or something, and you don't want to scratch that coffee table. Now, this is the finished foot. You take these 4 pieces off gently, put them in your water or in the scrap bucket because they are done now, and remove your foot. You can sign the bottom there, inside or whatever, and that is your finished inside and the foot for the T-bowl. Now if I cut this in half to show you what that final foot is going to look like, you can kind of envision it for yourself, but here is what it would look like. All right, again, you want to have the nice raised foot piece, the wall coming down into the bottom, and again, I could have trimmed more off there, but that is the general idea of your trimming of your T-bowl foot. Thanks for joining me.